Tamang kaalaman, tungo sa malayang kaisipan. Ako po si Ferdy Isleta.
Ang kultura ay susi sa kadakilaan. Ako po si Annie Luis.
Isang oras lang ang kailangan. Ako po si Renena Peñas. At ito ang
Padayon Presents, the NCCA Hour. Sulong na!
Padayon, the NCCA Hour. Sulong na! Ako po si Arsenio Nick Lizazo, tagapangulo ng Pambansang Komisyon para sa Kultura at mga Sining. Inihahandog namin sa inyo ang Sagisag Kultura TV.
Karangalan, ito ang inihahatid sa atin ng ating kultura. Anumang bagay na tumatangi sa atin bilang isa at nagkakaisang lupon ng mamamayan ay siyang ating pagkakakilanlan di lamang bilang isang bayan, kundi pati sa kung ano ang ating maiaambag o maibibigay bilang Filipino sa mundo.
Mula sa ating mga tradisyon, paniniwala, sining at mga selebrasyon hanggang sa mga kabuhayan, makulay na kasaysayan, maipagmamalaki ng mamamayan sa iba't ibang larangan at di mabilang na iba pang pamanang kultura. Ang lahat ng ito ay ang bumubuo sa ating pagkatao at pinag-uugatan bilang Filipino.
Kaya halina't kami samahan sa linggo-linggong pagdiriwang at pagpapayaman sa Filipinong kalinangan dito sa
Sagisag Kultura TV!
Dayaw na adlaw sa Idyo Tanan. Sa ating patuloy na paglalakbay sa lalawigan ng Surigao del Sur, panibagong bayang pupuntahan. Marami na naman tayong matutuklasan.
Mga kayamanang dati nang naroroon, pinapahalagahan at pinagyayaman hanggang ngayon. Ibang pamanang kayamanan na minsay na isantabi, ngayon binabalikan isa-isa, pinagmumulan ng panibagong inspirasyon at talaga namang dapat ipagmalaki.
Tara na't wag na natin patagalin. Pagtuklas sa bayang ito'y atin ang umpisahan. Ito ang
Likhang Yaman ng Cantilan. tinaguriang Cradle of Towns, dating sakop ng Cantilan ang mga bayang Carrascal, Madrid, Carmen, at Lanuza. Sa kasalukuyan, ang Cantilan ay binubuo ng 17 barangay at may layong kumulang sa 189 na kilometro mula sa lungsod ng Butuan. Ang mga hangganan nito ay bayan ng Carrascal sa Hilagang Kanluran, bayan ng Madrid sa Timog Silangan, bayan ng Sibagat sa Timog Kanluran, at Look ng Lanuza sa Silangan.
There are two narratives that explain about the origin of the word Cantilan. It comes from a shell. We call it tilang or takyubo, which is very abundant here in Cantilan since we are living in a coastal area. Then the second narrative is about a certain woman named Tilang who was a fish peddler, and then people would buy fish from her, and people would ask, where did you buy that? And they would say, Cantilang, and eventually it became Cantilan.
Cantilan nun language po kasi is very distinct when it comes sa tunog at pagkakabigkas. Even though Cantilan is part of Surigao, ang Cantilan po ay mayaman sa eco-cultural tourism po. Unang-una, marami pong mga isla sa Cantilan. Mayaman po ito sa beaches. Meron po din po tayo mga natural beauties gaya po ng lakes. At yun pong yung dagat at marine protected areas po. Ang Cantilan din po sa mainland po is may mountainous ranges din po. So may mga parteng may bundok.
This was not really the original town. We have what we call as the Daang Lungsod. Beyond the Cantilan River, that's the original town. But in 1856, there was a hurricane that devastated the whole town, and so the town was transferred here in this present location. Cantilan is a rural town, but although we are in a remote area, but then we have the luxuries of modern life.
Meron po tayong communities ng indigenous people wherein pwede po nating experience yung kanilang pamumuhay at kultura po.
The original inhabitants of Cantilan were the Manobos and the Mamanwas. Then the first Spanish missionaries arrived here in Cantilan in 1622. They were the Recollect fathers, the Agustinian Recollect. Then evangelization started in 1622. The town was erected in 1782. The parish was erected in 1791.
Dito rin po sa town proper, marami rin pong mga cultural sites po na nandito like ancestral houses, yung ruins ng lumang simbahan, at ruins po ng old town ng Cantilan. At kahit din po yung munisipyo po ng Cantilan ay isa pong historical site dahil po sa ito'y lumang-luma na rin po. At yung Town Plaza po, marami rin po tayong makikitang mga landmarks po. Gaya ng Philippine Air Force na plane po, ng World War II monuments po, at canyon po during the Spanish era po galing.
And the people here are still somehow conservative when it comes to culture, traditions, beliefs, attitudes. No? What is good in Cantilan is that the family spirit that binds all the Cantilanons together because of our history, because of our culture, and because of our common tradition.
Mga pamanang lahi na nakikita, nahahawakan, kabuluhay higit pa sa konkreto nitong kaanyuan. Sa likod nila ay nakalakip ang iba't ibang kwento nitong bayan. Kanilang halagay nakadiin sa taglay na kasaysayan.
Ito ay mga bantayog na sumasalamin sa kanilang nakaraan. Gayon din sa mga bagay na kanilang pinapahalagahan. Taglay rin ng mga ito, mga kwentong kabayanihan. Ito ay mga simbolo ng Cantilan nong kalinangan.
So let me begin with the tomb of Father Modesto Marzo, Casabana. Father Marzo is considered as the father of modern Cantilan because when the old Cantilan was wiped out by the tidal waves, it was Father Marzo who was the parish priest during that time. And it was he who led the people from the old town site here in the present one. That's why we consider him as the father of a modern Cantilan. And his tomb is over there. There was an original church built by the Spaniards. Then it was demolished in 1957 by the Dutch missionaries, and that's the present one. But we can still see the ruins of the old church. So the canon is one of the 100 canons that were brought from Jolo by the Spaniards in order to fight against the Moro pirates that were raiding Cantilan during the early part of Cantilan's history. Because during the 17th, 18th centuries, Moro raids were rampant in the old town site, and this canon was used to fight against the Moros. And so the people of Cantilan needed to have a kuta, a fortification, to defend them from the Moro raids. And that's called the Baluarte de San Miguel. When the town was transferred here, so they had to rebuild the town, no? And one of the needs was to have a tribunal for the municipio. The tribunal was built in 1879. To serve as the house for the municipal government.
Kung tungkol naman sa kabayanihan ang ating pag-uusapan, hindi niyan mawawalan ang bayan ng Cantilan. Dalawang magkapatid parehong nanilbihan sa bayan, mga general sa ating watawat, taos-pusong naglingkod ng buong katapatan.
Cantilan is also nicknamed as the cradle of generals because a good number of generals hailed from this town, from Cantilan. And one of these generals was Lieutenant General William Hatchkiss III. And the plane that we can see here in the town plaza is called Banug ng Cantilan, and that's the fighter plane that he used. Then General Hatchkiss has a brother, Charles Hatchkiss, who played a role also during the EDSA Revolution.
I was born here during the Second World War, January 8, 1943.
Child was very happy. We didn't have much. Didn't have electricity, nothing. But it was, it was fun because we didn't miss anything.
Until I graduated from high school.
And then I left for college. That was the first time, actually, I left Cantilan to go to the big city.
I went to engineering school in Mapua, in Manila. But I did not finish that because I went to the Air Force after my third year. I passed the entrance examination to the Air Force Flying School, and where I graduated in 1964.
Actually, I didn't have any plans. But because my brother joined the Air Force, when I finished college, he was already in the Air Force.
And then I had the chance to proceed to Basa Air Base in Pampanga, where the fighter wing of the Air Force at the time was located. At the time, in the 60s, the Philippine Air Force was the #1 Air Force in the whole Southeast Asian region. We were among the best at the time.
In fact, he was a member of the very famous Blue Diamonds acrobatic team of jet fighters. So that inspired me to join the Air Force, to follow his footsteps.
Let me focus on Charles, because I don't know if he said this. If you look at our history files, I think you will find him as a hero of EDSA, the EDSA Revolution. He was the squadron commander of the Sikorsky Squadron that defected to the Ramos side.
Nandun kami sa loob ng Clark. Nandito si Marcos sa Clark. Nung umalis ng umaga, imagine our feelings, no? Kami ang nanalo. Si Marcos ang umalis. Kasi kami ready na kami for the consequences. Although hindi kami papahuli. But luckily for us, we won the fight. And so I went back to my squadron. We performed the mission we were supposed to do.
Managed to break the stranglehold of Ferdinand Marcos on the country. So Cantilan should be proud of that too.
That's my role in the EDSA Revolution.
2012, third career in my lifetime, from the Air Force to rural banking or countryside development services. Actually, it's still in service of the people. I was called upon by President Aquino to sort of serve again in government sa Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines. After 2 years, the significant safety concerns of the International Civil Aviation Organization was lifted. European Union ban was lifted as well, so that our airlines could fly there. And their airlines, there was no longer any warning for the citizens, so they can fly here. Upgraded us to Category 1, which was the gold standard in civil aviation safety, you know.
In 1996, my brother became the commanding general of the Air Force. So he retired in January of 1999. And his plan was to establish a school in honor of our grandfather, the American grandfather, who really wanted to establish a school. My brother founded the William Hotchkiss Foundation. And then he was invited to the bank to be a member of the board. And he said, okay, I will join the bank as long as I'm the chairman and the president. I said, good, okay. So he stayed here. When I retired in 2005, he invited me. Please help me. The bank is getting big.
Itong community namin ay 5th-class municipality when I came in 1999. Now it's a 2nd-class community. And I think the bank had something to do with that. I'm happy that I'm back in the bank, back in my community, the community that I grew up in. No regrets that I'm back. And I hope to still contribute to the development of not just of Cantilan, but of Mindanao as well.
Mga lumang tahanan, refleksyon ng buhay noong unang panahon, matitibay at nananatiling nakatayo, pinreserba hanggang ngayon. Piping saksi nitong bayan sa mga nakalipas na pangyayari. Kung sila kaya ay nakakapagsalita, ano kaya ang kanilang masasabi?
There are several ancestral houses here in Cantilan that were built during the Spanish period, contemporary with the Tribunal and the Old Church of Cantilan. These are the houses of the seryeng, the Arezas, and the Arizobans.
I belong to the 4th generation of the original owner of this house, who is my great-great-grandfather, Cipriano Guason Seryeng. we used to call this the seryeng ancestral house. This house was originally constructed in 1857, then later on, 2008, by elder sister from Manila. So she said that we have to restore the ancestral house from our great-great-grandfather. So we agreed that we have to restore it, but the old window panes made of kapis, then the furnitures, the beds, the aparador, the chairs, and the doors, and the study table, we have to preserve it. And until now, you can see it. In our community, we call it tujang. I know that tujang is in the list of the hardwood, it is kamagong. Then we have the sewing machine of my mother, because she was a dressmaker. You can see it on the table, then the utensils used by my great-great-grandfather is still there.
Si Jose Arizobal, ang aking lolo, ang may-ari ng bahay na ito. Pinagawaan niya ito ng 1921. Hanggang ngayon, walang changes. Dati siyang kabisa sa Cantilan.
Sa bahay na ito ni Jose Arizobal, matatagpuan ng iba't ibang antigong kagamitan gaya ng mga banga, lamesa, aparador, at altar. Gayon din ang mga sahig na kahoy ng bahay.
Actually, itong bahay na to, nagawa ito dahil sa may kinasal, parang duri. Tapos itong kahoy na to, mga haligi, kinuha lang diyan sa tabi-tabi na kuan. Nagawa ito noong 1857 pa. Ang mga structure niya, original pa rin. Kasi itong bahay na to, nung magkagera, iniwanan ito ng lolo ko. Tapos ang tumira dito yung Hapon na nagpapatrolya dito sa bayan.
Sa bahay naman na ito ay makikita ang mga lumang dokumento at resibo, gaya ng mga sedula, mga pinagbabayarang amilyar. Ilan pa sa mga naikubli ng kasalukuyang henerasyon ay ang mga sisidlang kawayan na pinagtaguan ng mga dokumento na nailigtas sa pagkasira noong ikalawang digmaan pangdaigdig. Gayon din, isang kalipunan ng mga nasaliksik na kaalaman patungkol sa bayan ng Cantilan sa patnugot ni Ginoong Antonino Areza ang ipinakita sa amin ng kasalukuyang may-ari. Nilalaman nito ang mahalagang tala ng kasaysayan ng bayan tulad ng mga naninilbihang mga pinuno. Magagandang tanawin sa Cantilan ay di ka mauubusan. Sa kanyang mga isla pa lamang ikayahanga ng walang katapusan. Iba't ibang anyo ng karikitan, matatagpuan dito. Cantilan ay tunay na nabiyayaan. Ito'y isang tunay na paraiso.
Among sa mga beaches po ng Cantilan, unang-una po sa listahan ang Libtong or Flores Cove po. So, ito po ay nasa General Island. Yung General Island po, marami po siyang lagoons na yung iba po actually is hindi pa na-explore. Isa lang po Libtong Cove na explore pa po. May mga cottages po dito, pwede rin po mag-overnight. Maganda po yung tubig doon, pristine po, emerald po yung color niya. Tapos yung General Island po, yun po yung malaking isla po na katapat po ng Cantilan. Yung katabi po ng Libtong, meron po dong Rock Gem, Treasure Island po. Privately owned po siya. So meron din po itong cottages. Puti po yung buhangin doon, pino. Pwede rin pong mag-swimming doon, mag-kayak po, at mag-snorkeling. Kalapit lang din po doon yung Inijakan Beach Club. Isang white sand resort din po ito. May mahaba po siyang dalampasigan na white sand po.
Ang pangalan nito, Pangi, Iniyakan General Island. Ang makikita po rito ay pispan. May chapel sa taas. Pagkatapos ito, may lake pa doon sa taas.
Ang Dayaw Lake po ay nasa General Island. Kailangan mo na mag-trekking bago makapunta sa lugar. So isa po siyang natural beauty na lake po. Hindi po siya developed. It's a potential tourist attraction po. Pero napakaganda po ng tubig doon. Pristine din po siya. Ang Aguila Beach po ay nasa Caglayag po siya, pero party pa rin po siya ng Cantilan. So isa po itong beach or resort na currently dinedevelop po na privately. Maganda po yung ambience doon, maganda po yung view ng dagat doon. Katapat po ito ng General Island. Yung sa Malinawa Cool Spring po, ginawan po siya ng resort. Ito po ay located sa Barangay Parang, Cantilan, Surigao del Sur po. Meron din po itong accommodation. Ang Malinawa Cool Spring po, meron pong section na pang bata, meron din po pang malalaki.
Mga inani mula sa dagat at lupa, sari-saring pagkain ang nagagawa.
Kilala po ang Cantilan sa paggawa ng bagoong o yung shrimp paste. Tinawag po siya na angsuhan kasi angsu sa Bisaya po yun. Sa Tagalog, mapanghi. Maliban po doon, yung mga delicacies po ng Cantilan, meron po tayong tinatawag na pinipig at saka sayungsong.
Ako po si Analo Lumapgid, taga Sitio Ayoki, Barangay General Island. Ito pong ginagawa namin ngayon ay breadfruit chips at breadfruit strips. Una dito, binabalatan. So before siya binabalatan, kailangan hinugasan muna yung bagong pitas na breadfruit. Tsaka siya hihiwain ng pang chips sa ganitong hiwa at yung strips naman sa ganitong pagkakahiwa. Meron kaming strips na with cheese flavor, meron din naman pong plain. Sa chips, plain lang po with konting iodized salt yung binibenta namin. Yun, pagkatapos dito sa pag-slice, ito si Auntie Salve, siya yung pinaka-eksperto sa pag-fry nitong chips. Kasi pag hindi siya ma-fry ng tama, nasusunog siya. So, tas after sa pag-fry, i-drain lang siya dito. Maraming salamat sa Rare Philippines at sa LGU Cantilan sa lahat ng suportang binibigay sa aming organisasyon, ang Ayoki Conservation Enterprise. Halina tikman ang kulot chips ng Ayoki Conservation Enterprise.
Yung supplier ko nito, yung sa Angels BCBs, bali sila ang nag-supply mga eyepiece yun, manubo dito sa Surigao del Sur. Bali ang nakatulong yung honey ko para sa mga kalusugan ng mga bumibili niyan, para sa kanyang yung mga sakit-sakit na naman, ramdaman nila. At the same time, yung binta nakatulong din sa mga eyepiece na nag-supply sa akin.
Tiyan nyo sana'y hindi pa puno. Silid para sa iba pang pagkain, sana mayroon pa. Mula sa mga kutkutin at merienda, paboritong ulam ng mga kantilang nun, ating tikman pa.
Hindi na kinilaw, kantilang nun sa Surigao, pinaka-the best ang tuna. Lagyan natin ng sibuyas, at saka kalamansi, tapos at saka luya. Tapos at saka dayap. Sili. Tapos at saka bell pepper. At saka suka. At saka asin, walang bitsin ha. Tapos at saka haluin. Pwede na ka umangaon. Hindi na kinilaw kantilang doon gazon, Bisaya gazon.
Bukod sa kinilaw, isa rin sa mga sikat na pagkain katilang nun, ang basoy. Ang mga sangkap nito ay mantika, bawang, sibuyas, atsal o bell pepper, oregano, repolyo, karne, at dugo ng kalabaw, at ilang pampalasa tulad ng asin at toyo. Igigisa ang bawang, sibuyas at atsal, kasunod nito ay ang karne ng kalabaw. Ilang saglit pa, maaari nang ibuhos ang tubig at dugo ng kalabaw. Matapos pakuluan, ay pwede nang isunod ang oregano at repolyo kasama ng mga pampalasang asin at toyo. Pakukuluan pa ng ilang minuto, ito'y siguradong luto na.
Matapos kayong mabusog sa iba't ibang pagkain, inyong mga mata naman ang kanilang bubusugin. Ilan mga kabataan magpapamalas ng kanilang pagiging malikhain. Kayo'y pasisiklaban ng kanilang husay sa visual na sining.
Yung visual arts namin, isa sa area ng SPA curriculum ng Cantilan National High School. Marami na akong naging mag-aaral na nagsipagtapos na ng sekundarya ng kanilang senior high school na naging tanyag sa iba't ibang estilo ng pagpipinta. Kagaya ng cubism, saka yung realism. Tapos naging mahusay na rin sila sa estilo at iba't ibang technique noon. Kaya nakakagawa sila ng isang obra na kung saan ipagmamalaki ko rin bilang kanilang guro. Ipinamalas ko sa kanila yung dapat sa pagpipinta, meron silang pinaghuhugutan ang kulturang Cantilan noon dito sa Surigao del Sur. Kaya dito sa aking mga visual arts dito, nag-uumpisa pa lang sila sa pagkikilala ng iba't ibang estilo sa pagpipinta at yung technique kung paano nila magawa yung kanilang gustong gawin bilang obra.
Musika at sayaw, bahagi rin ng sining ng Cantilan. Sa mga larangang ito'y sila rin ay may naitatagong kayamanan. Kung kantahan at galawan ang ating pag-uusapan, Cantilang non ay hindi aatras. Kanilang husay, ikaw ay pakikitaan.
Mahalaga ang musika sa mga kantilang nun dahil ang musika ay nagbibigay ng kung ano ang kultura ng mga tao dito sa Cantilan. Kasi mayroong mga bata ngayon, mga new generation na hilig sila sa musika. Hilig sila mag-compose. Halimbawa, si Sandro Orbistondo, composer siya ng Cantilan na awit. Surigaw. Basta ang well-known ay Cantilan.
Sa among ng karazawan kay kung iban kaw ang mga danggo maangkon man bisan hain pa amo mabagyan imo tugma sa mga anak nataghatagan mo ng marazaw na bunga kung sa bukid kung sa patag kung sa dagat kung ayay makalupos kay bisan hain pa pagkagaling mo surigaw sa paningkamot surigaw sa tanan lugar di lain maglabaw kundi ikaw
itik-itik din kaugikan itik-itik sa pandagitan itik-itik nagpuno nito itik-itik nagpupasiyaw.
Ang itik-itik ay isa sa pinakasikat na katutubong sayaw ng mga Filipino na paboritong itanghal sa loob at labas ng ating bayan. Ngunit alam nyo ba na ang sayaw na ito ay nagmula mismo sa bayan ng Cantilan? Nadiskubre ni pambansang alagad ng sining sa sayaw, Francisca Reyes Aquino. Naging popular ang naturang sayaw di lamang sa mga pagtatanghal pang-entablado, kundi pati na rin sa mga baylihan sa buong probinsya. Kinalaunay, nilikha ni Ginoong Antonino Areza ang titik ng awitin at sayawing itik-itik.
Iba-iba man ang ating mga pinag-ugatan, iba-iba man ang ating mga katangian, sa ilalim ng ating bandila, tayo'y pantay-pantay. Lahat tayo'y Filipinong tunay.
Ang kultura ng mga manubo po, ma'am, since nandito tayo sa Cantilan is one of the IP community. Makukonsidera siya as culture or IP community na matatagpuan sa Surigao del Sur. Basically, dito sa Cantilan, so our culture is maganda siya, hindi lang sa mga visual like sa beads or sa painting. Maganda din siya based on their character po. They are true to person or they are true to their community, to their people. So, ang mga manobos po kasi, they believe that the dialect that they use literally on their character is batasan, sinadyahan, buot, sinabinitan, which means that these people are very loving people.
Makulay at magarbo, sa unang tingin pa lang ay ikay mapapalingon at mapapatitig sa kasuotan ng mga katutubong manobo. Ngunit hindi kumpleto ang kanilang mga kasuotan kung wala ang kumakalansing at makukulay na palamuti. Sa parehong mabait lalaki, ang tawag sa kanilang aksesorya sa ulo ay tebang. Ang kanilang kwintas ay parehong tinatawag na paliot. Ang kanilang porselas naman ay tinatawag na bagnot. Habang ang porselas naman para sa paa ay tinatawag na tekos. Samantala, ang sinturong gamit ng mga kababaihan ay tinatawag na salihaw.
¡Viva, viva, viva! Lahing matapang, lahing matalino, nalakbay ko ng mundo. Walang unos o bagyo.
Sa paglipas ng panahon at pagpasok ng iba't ibang impluwensya at makabagong teknolohiya, madali tayong naaaanod sa agos ng globalisasyon at kadalas ay nakakaligtaan natin ang mga bagay na tunay na tumatangi at nagpapayaman sa atin bilang Filipinong mamamayan.
Ang tunay na kaunlaran ng isang bayan ay di lamang makikita sa kung gaano kamoderno ang isang lipunan. Ito ay tunay na matatagpuan sa patuloy na pagpapahalaga at pagpapayaman sa mga ugat kung saan tayo nagsimula at umusbong bilang Filipino at bilang isang bayan. Ito ang inspirasyon at likhang yaman ng Cantilan.
Patuloy natin patatagin ang ating kultura, ipagmalaki ang Filipinong pagkakakilanlan. Sama-sama natin muling tuklasin ang ating katotohanan, kabutihan at kagandahan bilang bayan at Filipinong mamamayan. Ako po si Akihiro Blanco.
Ako naman si Lara Maige at ito ang
Sagisag Kultura TV.
Sa mga lugar na ito nakatanim ang ugat ng pagka-Pilipino. Ako ay Pilipino, ako'y makadiyos. Ako ay Pilipino, ako'y makatao. Saan man makarating, sino mang makapiling, aangat ang galing habang buhay Pilipino. Sa buhaw ng langit at dagat, mula sa pulang animoy dugo, hinalo sa dilaw na araw at bituin. Yan ang kulay ng katatagan, yan kulay ng kagitingan, buong tapang na sumisigaw. Yan ang Pilipino. Ako ay Pilipino, ako'y makadiyos. Ako ay Pilipino, ako'y makatao. Saan man makarating, sino mang makapiling, aangat ang galing habang buhay Pilipino. Sabay dala ng pagkakataon o sadyang pinuot naging okasyon. Pagdiriwang ang aming kasiyahan, ipinagbubunyi ang kalayaan. Pinupuri ang katapangan, kapanganakan, pag-iisang dito. Pagbabalik bayan o talino nagtatagisan, ipagdiwang natin ang pagiging Pilipino. Ako ay Pilipino, ako'y makadiyos. Ako ay Pilipino, ako'y makatao. Saan man makarating, sino mang makapiling, aangat ang galing habang buhay Pilipino.
Sa kahoy, bato at metal inungkit, sikat musika ang aming inaawit. Mga aral mula sa aming ninuno, upang ako'y nang umiibig na puso.
Mga gawang kamay at kathang isip, mga bagay at obrang nilino, pinipili at Pilipino, sa gisa natin Pilipino. Ako ay Pilipino, lahing matapang, lahing matalino.
There is much to be learned from people who have lived on this land much longer than we have. A knowledge that manifests itself not only in their relationships with nature, their songs and epics, their technology and creations, but in their very survival. Only by being aware of this heritage of the indigenous can we find not only our roots, but our direction.
Their pride and ours, captured in one word, Dayaw.
Nature creates, man imagines, and man recreates. Great events take place, man remembers, and man reimagines. Through a piece of music, a song, a ritual, a chant, an oral joust, even an epic. And as these grow and are eventually passed on, the memory becomes a code of conduct or a collection of lessons, a manual that teaches one how to be perhaps a good Maranao or a good Ifugao or a Mangyan, and hopefully an ideal of one's identity. The oral traditions of our indigenous peoples are the subject of our second exploration, yet another source of Dayaw, our knowledge, our pride. Music and rhythm are the very basis of chanted epics, unspoken, wordless repetitions, transforming, mutating into universes of their own. Before we listen to the indigenous epics, I want you first to listen to a Maguindanao virtuoso. The late Samawan Sulaiman, who was among the first indigenous artists to be awarded the Gawad Manlilikha ng Bayan. A true virtuoso, Samawan's instrument of choice was a kudyapi, or two-stringed lute. Its two strings seemingly a metaphor for its universal opposites of constancy and change. The music he chose to master was a reflection of the stately court traditions of the Maguindanao. The late maestro was renowned all over Maguindanao as a true artist of his people, an artist who chose to keep Maguindanao classical tradition alive and to embellish it with his own genius. His melodic and rhythmic permutations transform, mutate into a universe of their own. Very different but equally powerful are the rhythms beaten out on gongs and bamboo floors by the southern Palawanon. Here, another Gawad Manlilikha ng Bayan awardee, the late Masino Intaray, was recorded by the National Commission on Culture and Arts, as he led the Basal and Sam in their village in the highlands of Brooks Point. Their playing was made even more hypnotic by the women who beat out an equally complex rhythm of the tarek with their bare feet on the bamboo floor. When the human voice musically mirrors and echoes the complexities, textual meanings, and flow of narratives, the chant is born. One voice telling a story, another voice answering and pushing the narrative. Then, a whole community joining in. The chant is born. The epic unfolds. In the Tungod School in Lagawe, Ifugao, teacher Fatima Ngalawen has devoted a good part of her career to training selected pupils in the chanting of the Ifugao epic, the Hudhud. She selects a girl from each batch who will be the lead chanter or the munhawe, as well as others who will form the chorus or munabuhi. Then batch after batch, she teaches them the chant of their ancestors. The Hudhud has been recognized by the UNESCO as one of the masterpieces of humanity's intangible heritage. The Hudhud recounts the adventures of the Ifugao epic heroes, the most popular being Aliguyon. The culture hero, whom legend says taught Ifugao women the Hudhud of other heroes. Traditionally, the Hudhud is sung during harvest by entire communities. It is also sung during important ritual occasions. Although it is traditionally associated with women, men are also allowed to sing in the chorus. Year after year, the Tungod school chanters have won local competitions and have been invited to perform in Manila. And with every passing batch, the legacy of this chant is passed on to the young Ifugaos.
I invited the elders to chant and then I recorded their song. Afterwards, I must have to learn the song. After 2 weeks, I memorized it and then that's the time I taught it to the children. Meron pong konting changes kasi pag from the elders direct to the children, hindi po nila makuha yung original beauty ng Hudhud chant. So, may adjustments before I taught it to the children line by line. There are many words that I cannot understand. Some words were very deep. So I always call on the munhawe to explain the meaning of the Hudhud. And so I also explain it to the children because we cannot change it to simpler form because that's really the beauty of the Hudhud.
Fatima's lifelong dedication to teaching the Hudhud has given the Tungod chanters many distinctions and awards, but even she admits that there is so much to learn and preserve.
It came to my mind that we should preserve it by singing it, telling stories, because Hudhud has 200 stories. After classes, the children always come to my door and say, "Ma'am, are we going to practice the Hudhud?" And say, "You wait for me after dismissal."
Worthy role models for the young chanters are the elders of their village, whose chanting is full of primal power and spontaneity. Although the Hudhud is traditionally chanted by women in the fields during harvests, Manong Leonardo and his neighbors know it well and will sing it, male and female elders in one chorus, to make sure It is passed on to young Ifugaos. Vintage footage of the campus of the Mindanao State University shows Maranao students dramatizing a chant of their own people, the Darangin. An epic of approximately 72,000 lines, it stands side by side with the Quran as a foundation of Maranao culture. The epic is not primarily Islamic in nature. Scholars have pointed out that much of its content stems from pre-Islamic times. The stories that make up the epic meld both Islamic and pre-Islamic tenets. The result of this melding, this distillation, is a code of personhood, a record of what the Maranao describes as anonin arawatin, all that is worth emulating. 25 song cycles make up the Darangin, of which only 18 have been recorded and studied. Although a majority of the songs deal with the adventures and romances, other songs deal with the laws on kingship, succession, warfare, diplomacy, and statesmanship. Because they are essentially narrative, all great epics lend themselves well to dance and performance. The Darangin is so rich that chapters and vignettes can readily become performances in themselves. The stories become chants and songs. The songs, dances. The dances, object lessons in the behavior of traditional role models. The honor is a professional singer, dancer, and chantress whose services are much in demand in Maranao society. During weddings and parties, she is hired to perform traditional songs and display skills like playing the kulintangan. But more than a hired pro, the honor is expected to act and behave in the manner of the legendary princesses of the Darangin, a role model and a living embodiment of all that is graceful and gracious in a Maranao woman.
Natuto akong maging honor kasi noon, yung tita ko, honor siya. Sumasama ako sa kanya. Ina-realize ko na maganda pala yung magiging honor. Kailangan ng honor. Pag pumupunta doon, maganda siya, inaayos yung mukha, pati damit niya maganda. Para pagdating doon, maganda siya tingnan. At saka yung boses, yung parang sabihin natin yung parang hindi na sinasabihin na yung boses natin masyadong matigas. Yung medyo may pagkalambot yung boses. Mahalaga sa akin yung pagiging honor ko. Kahit papaano na yung mga pamilya ko, tsaka yung kamag-anak, yung ka-relatives ko, na pwede rin nila ako ipagmalaki kasi marunong kahit papaano may career din ako.
Older footage shows another honor demonstrating the proper behavior expected of a Maranao princess. Again, influenced by the role models found in the Darangin. Biases and misconceptions are quite palpable when it comes to our Muslim fellow men. Their image sometimes clouds our ability to see the richness of their traditions and the innate nobility instilled in them by their epics. When man commits his epics, his stories, his feelings into a written text, he commits these to more than just memory. He puts down in writing not only his very being, but the essence of his entire race. And for that, one needs more than just a chanted song. One needs a syllabary in a system of writing. Pre-Hispanic syllabaries devised by our ancestors were widespread among the peoples of the Philippine archipelago. However, they now survive only among 4 indigenous cultural communities in Mindoro and Palawan. The most famous of these is a syllabary of the Hanunuo Mangyan of Mindoro. The scholar Anton Pusma describes the unique qualities of the Mangyan syllabary.
The Mangyan culture, the ambahan, is still alive. It is still being practiced by the Mangyans. If it was not for their value, their cultural value, I wouldn't mind it. Encourage the Mangyans, especially the older people. Do not forget to teach your children what you inherited from your forefathers.
The late Ginao Bilog was a master of the syllabary and its use in the ambahan, the traditional poetic verse form of the Mangyan. In this rare footage, the Gawad Manilikanang Bayan awardee demonstrates his mastery of the syllabary and his skill in etching his own verse on bamboo.
Ito ay galing pa sa aming mga ninuno. Noong una, marunong din po ang aking ama. Kaya gumaya po ako sa aking ama. Kung minsan, mayroon po kaming ambahan na tataginip, na panaginip po laang. Ito po ay kahit ilang taon, kahit 10 taon, basta't hindi mabasa, hindi masira, hindi madudurog ito.
Matapag mga duwa, magkunkuno sigun layan, magbilin kay.
We wanted to make sure that the very important epics of the Philippines, especially Darangen and Hudhud, will survive the passage of time. And initially, what we did was to submit these epics for declaration by UNESCO as masterpieces of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity. These are the epics Hudhud and Darangen. Because the moment they are declared as such, it will be easier to get funding support for us to encourage the young people to have programs so that the young people can be taught the traditions.
Music that is both sophisticated and powerful. Songs and chants worth passing on to future generations. Epics that show us ideals of heroism. Syllabaries and alphabets where memories and emotions are captured. All gifts of the mind and the intellect. If we could all remove the blinders from our eyes that dismiss these gifts as tribal or ethnic or even primitive, how much richer our own modern worldview would be, and how much more we could feel and rejoice in Dayaw, our knowledge, our pride.